You're all set.
Oh, okay.
Just hit the
And
space
it's
bar
just
when you want
the
to
arrow
go.
keys here, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's do it. The lady has to leave soon.
Yeah.
Okay, and now for something they said could never be done. Orbital launches for tens of thousands of dollars for the entire launch. Rick Kwan and I call this plan CubeCab. Next slide. So we realized that world domination is not actually all that fun. More interesting goal, industrializing space, as in making it so a lot more people can use the microgravity environment. So here's our plan in a nutshell. First, we make a dedicated CubeSat launcher that can launch for low cost, building an operational model that scales so we can amortize for our way to profitability once we have enough customers. This is exactly what the Nanosat Launch Challenge is aiming for, so if no one else wins before we're offering service, we'll pick this up. Though if someone else beats us to it, that's cool too, we're not counting on it for funding. What we're counting on is that this opens up basic science, even art, as Interorbital has found. Leads a lot of people just mess around, try ideas, see what works. In a very real sense, it lets them prospect their possible ideas, and some of them will turn up winners. If you're familiar with the California Gold Rush, it's no secret who consistently got rich out of that. So we serve widely, sell more launches to those who are onto something, and profit. Then, you know, maybe build an orbital headquarters, because that's the end thing. Next slide. So here we see how costs break down for typical commercial rockets today, multiple ton payloads. Note that the costs are in the millions of dollars. This is expensive enough that it gets few customers and invites further costs in trying to protect the investment. The key thing is that few customers. All fixed launch for a launch site come out of about one launch a year, so the launches are expensive, so there's only one customer a year, so the fixed costs have to, and so on. In the business world, this is what we call a vicious cycle, and it's one the rocket industry has not been able to break out of so far, because they keep trying to recruit one of these variables at a time. Next slide. Our model, and you can see the cost here in the thousands of dollars, tweaks several things at once. Minimal payload, building up to a few thousand customers a year, with some other optimizations, mainly process automation, automation, I can speak honest, and air launch. Drive costs down, build up the market by charging less, get customers who currently think space is too expensive to even consider, because by today's models it is. Previous slide. Note that among the non-satellite costs, the actual disposable hardware and fuel aren't that much. Customization plays a part, so the range safety and the launch site cost, again, one customer a year. Labor dominates among the non-satellite costs. With a low launch volume, it can be difficult to recover the cost of automation in a reasonable time frame. Back to the next slide. Here, fuel is a larger fraction because we're driving everything else down so much. Next slide. So how exactly do we drive it down? Well, first, air launch. It's not a new idea. Generation Orbit, DARPA, there are others doing it because it works. And it eliminates the initial balancing on a pillar of flame. Doesn't get rid of the initial ignition risk completely, but reduces and transforms them. It skips part of the atmosphere, lets us operate out of an airport that others pay much of the cost of, and it's going to like this. Means we can remove the actual ignition to the middle of nowhere, like out of over the ocean, greatly reducing risk to those not involved. Next slide. We plan to stick closely to the CubeSat standard. It means we don't have to customize the launch vehicle each time. It means we don't have to reanalyze its characteristics each time. We also plan to get approval for a set of missions, range of trajectories, types of payloads, which we can use over and over again, reducing the FAA's per launch paperwork to hopefully about that of filing a general aviation flight plan, launch operator's license, and then we just use it. If we assume a few hundred customers a year, we can justify automating the painless acceptance testing. Heat and vibration alone may be sufficient. Most important, we push and tweak everything until we are turning things around, regulatory testing everything, in days or weeks instead of months or years. That's why we call it CubeCab versus the multi-ton buses that might take several CubeSats at once all the payloads are ready and the market is made ready. Next slide. Labor is a large cost, so reduce the labor. Current launch teams have about 50 people contributing 1/5 time. First step, make it 10 actual people, you get less communication overhead, you can pull off a few right there. Since we're building small, under 5 meters is something a CNC machine can snap out in a few pieces, greatly reducing assembly labor. We bounced our ideas off of Techshop last night, came out to about 50-ish, plus or minus several, for one of our designs. One man could assemble that and hook it up to a testing rig in an hour. We can outsource the telemetry and telecommunication to existing services as needed, so most of our customers won't need real-time controllers or satellite. They just want it launched. Some don't even care what trajectory it is, they just want it in space, period. Next slide. So, where do we get more customers than currently exist? Well, for one, universities. 20,000 plus 10 for the SAT, that's getting to a budget they can consider shelling out every year to give their students hands-on experience, and guaranteed turnaround within the same academic year, if they hit it to us in time, is a big plus. There are tens of thousands of those in the US alone, and you can add in some of the virtual high schools too. Then industry. Microgravity fabrication has long been theorized to make stuff we can't make the size of the gravity well. React half a kilogram for a few months, include a recovery system in the CubeSat. Total manufacturing cost comes only to about $100 a gram. That's about what high-end medicines cost today. We can also take payloads from NASA, but only if they're willing to play by commercial off-the-shelf rules. Try going to a store and fill out reams of paperwork before they'll buy a hammer for you? Yeah, we ain't doing that. Those are just some of the possibilities, but mostly, notice how many people can think of an app in space. Who needs a killer app? You have a lot of people who are going for an app. That itself is our killer app. Next slide. So yeah, we did the diabolical laughter. We'll spare you, it didn't come out right. We need some voice coaching. So anyway, ITAR. Anyone who in this room who still doesn't know it needs to look it up. Seriously. But it only affects non-US customers and doesn't apply to things in the public domain, like, oh, say, the CubeSat standard itself, and any standard for telemetry or something else that we or someone put in the public domain. So if we let customers build their own CubeSats, we're not telling the customers the details of our specific rockets. We just say, build to these standards, and then we take it. Though we'll still like doing cursory inspections to make sure we're not launching ASATs or the like. Next competition. Yeah, there are a few in this room, for example. But most of our competitors are going for larger payloads, at least 10 kilograms or up. We might go to 6U, maybe 12U, anything larger. Take it, please. We're the low-cost, low-volume dedicated specialists. And no, we won't have 200 customers in our first year of operation. This is where the mad science comes in, economics specifically. Offer low price, bring in customers who weren't already customers, ramps things up until amortization brings our costs down so we're profitable. I'm not worried about the first flight, I'm worried about the thousands. Next slide. So that's what we're planning, and here's who we are. Let's open it up for questions.
Is that a true statement about ITAR in the public domain? Because when you put, for example, if I return loose a rocket engine, a fully documented rocket engine.
No, CubeSat.
Okay. Well, yes, but his statement was that you don't have to worry about ITAR if you put stuff in the public domain.
ITAR doesn't apply to information that is in the public domain.
Right, but if I release something into the public domain, I may be liable under the law for exactly that.
Well, okay, yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Because,
we were just talking about this before. I was told that if it's in the public domain, if it's on the internet, it's probably okay. But if I go in there and I collect a bunch of articles and I send it to a foreign person who needs to know how to build something and those directly aid him, I can be prosecuted.
right. So yeah, so there's different degrees of in the public domain, but told someone to build to the CubeSat standard.
but
That's
if you go to the CubeSat standard on their site, they've actually gone through the labor of checking out that things are ITAR clear already. So that part's safe.
Okay, no, I'm just clarifying the statement that was made. That's
It's
all.
not automatic.
Not about CubeSat, but just a general statement.
of if you it's in the public domain,
Not
then
always
it's
Well, and further, you could be prosecuted for putting certain information in the public domain in the first place, because that's automatically communicating it to the world. So like if you're communicating your rocket-specific design to the world, that could get you in trouble. So we don't do that. Instead, what we say is, build to these standards.
Well, but again, you have, Brenda's already had, for each of her satellites, has had to go and get this approved and things like that. It's not even if you say build to these standards, you're still going to have to go get it.
If I'm exporting it to a foreign.
Well, that's another thing is we don't.
I have to have a license.
But you have rocket propulsion system.
No, not on
just the
CubeSats.
CubeSat
This is
itself?
small, and I was totally shoeverything by that.
Yeah, no, if you're, because as Paul said yesterday, and Brenda reiterated today, if you're giving them information about your rocket and everything else, that is, you're crossing ITAR lines.
Right. So
in order to understand what your vehicle is able to do, including vibration was the example.
I usually refer them to something that is posted online that is a similar vehicle, because I can't.
Right, exactly.
I can't do that.
Exactly. And
If you can meet these requirements, I'll be happy.
Exactly. You have to walk a very fine line.
yeah. But it is walkable, that's the point.
It is walkable, it's just,
Except
just be
for-
careful how you say it, everything
Yeah,
else, because, again, if you annoy the wrong person, then you're in trouble.
Well, that's true regardless of what the law says. I'm sorry, that's the world we live in.
Yeah, but
Next question.
Yeah. Okay, so how far along are you guys like in
have you been to
So,
finding customers
So,
for
no,
this?
so let me put it this way, we are not even, I would say we're not at the point of PDR yet. There's some conceptual design that's going on. We've been talking with various university groups and experts in the field. And, they're pointing us at, so interesting comment, one of the professors who's really, really busy that I happen to know said that, you should look at the Acid project. As soon as he found out what we were doing. So we're sort of in a feedback cycle with them and trying to narrow the thing down.
Yeah, we've got initial agreements with some guys for some of the resources we need, but, well,
Yeah.
more always helps.
But I actually meant one of like lines of the customers. Like you talk.
Oh, have we talked to customers yet?
Yeah, like if you go back at like talk about pharmaceutical or crystal research.
Whoops. How far?
We talked with some. They haven't been willing to give us written letters of interest, but they've been willing to give us verbals. So.
Okay, so
There's been a little bit of dialogue.
so generally who they're like, are they researchers or are they actual like biotech startups?
Most of them are researchers. Some of them are researchers at biotech startups.
Well, I guess.
But the point is that sure, we might be interested if you get to 20. If you can actually offer this, come back when you're actually offering this.
Okay, so how would you answer? So remember, speaker yesterday pretty much said that that's like hogwash. How would you answer?
So we don't directly care whether it's hogwash or not. What we care about is that there's someone who's willing to pay $20,000 plus the cost of the experiment to actually try it and prove whether it's hogwash or not. Because guess what? That person's our customer. The person who's saying it's hogwash is not. We serve our customers.
How many of those are there?
We don't know at this point. We've heard from greater than 1, less than 100. Actually, less than 10. So.
Less than, okay.
But that's for that specific one. We've also been hearing from some who were thinking do art, but
I think the other metric though is what she has within Orbital. When you have a vehicle, they'll come.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know, so
but they
So
weren't
that's
coming
saying it's
before
true?
the satellites. That was the interesting thing.
before the what?
Before the satellite launch combination, it was very difficult to sell launches. And that's, I don't know how maybe the timing was right.
But now the
when they did
CubeSats
that,
are
but
come.
somehow, yeah, CubeSats have come into their own and having developed the CubeSat as a separate, alternate, less expensive version, facilitated the whole revenue stream.
Next. That it?
thank you, gentlemen.